Hello friends, in the series which we are doing on the making of contemporary India from 1950 to 1990s, in the second part of our lecture we will talk about agriculture and industry, the 5-year plans. And in the earlier lecture we talked about the kind of challenges which were posed because of the colonial rule, and these kind of challenges, how when India attained independence, India tried to tide over these kind of challenges which are posed to them, and how it adopted the planning process in the context of the 5-year plans, and the focus of the 5-year plans in the context that how more and more employment opportunities they were to be generated, because there were a lot of unemployment in India. And we also had to see that any kind of a growth it had to go through in the context of stability, that prices are stable in nature, because when prices will be unstable, then it will be very difficult for the people to survive, as if there will be more inflation, and because of the poverty the inflationary tendencies will further ruin the position of the people. So we find that as there were a lot of inequalities of income and wealth in India, so they had to be removed over a period of time, and how the issue of self-reliance was to be achieved was also one of the important concerns, apart from being increasing in the national income and the per capita income. So in that context, what was being done was, in the framework that India had to follow a kind of a policy where the society was to be based on the socialist pattern of the society, and how Indian Parliament in 1954 talked about this, and thereafter in IPR, Industrial Policy Resolution 1956, and the second plan. So we find that there was a lot of scope for the public sector as well as for the private sector. So the economy had to move in this kind of a direction, where this kind of a model was to be in the context of some sort of a mixed economy. And we also find that in different plans, especially in the second plan, we find that heavy and capital goods industry, they were being focused upon, and that was also concerned with the Mahalanobis model, and how Professor Mahalanobis, who is also known to be the father of Indian statistics, and how he played an important role during the second 5-year plans, and how during the second 5-year plans the focus was on the capital goods industry. And because of this kind of a focus which continues even in the third 5-year plan and thereafter, we find that mixed economy was to be an important aspect of the Indian economy. And we find that during the first 5-year plan from 1951 to 56, and this 5-year plan also witnessed that during this period from 1946 onwards, or especially 1947-48, a lot of refugees, the people became refugees in their own country as they migrated from one area to another, from one country to another, from India to Pakistan, and from Pakistan to India. Thereafter, in the second 5-year plan from 1956 to 1961, where Professor P.C. Mahalanobis, he played an important role, and how his strategy was put into practice, and it also continued in the third plan. So we find that in the second in 5-year plan, the focus was on the capital goods industry, and how India was able to achieve some of the targets which it had designed for, or it had decided for itself, and how thinkers like Mahalanobis, they were able to implement the kind of ideas which they had in their own mind, so that the economy could prosper during this period. And we also find that import substitution was an important component during this time, and it was very critical for the self-reliance, because unless we will be able to substitute the imports, then we will be in a situation where we have to import more and more from other areas. So in order to remove any kind of external dependence, one has to substitute the imports. And we also find during this time that some kind of a foreign aid and investment was also seen to be essential in the initial phase to finance the massive setup in the investment through, and though the objective was to do away with this need as soon as possible by rapidly increasing domestic savings. So, as India was devoid of savings and not people, it did not have the capital, or so that that capital could be invested in the industrialization process. So, we find that some kind of foreign aid at the initial level was there, but the motto or the objective was to replace this foreign capital in due course of time, and the indigenous capital or savings, they should replace that. And we also find that how during this time the labor intensive and cottage industries, they were being promoted, because India witnessed a lot of unemployment, and people they were not able to secure any employment. So, thereafter the labor intensive kind of industries could easily sustain in India. So, the cottage industries and the labor intensive industries, they could be they were being promoted, so that more and more labor could be absorbed in such kind of projects, especially if in like agriculture or maybe any kind of a community development programs or cooperatives. And state was also in a way trying to make some kind of investments in them. And when we tend to understand the kind of elements which are there in the Mahalanobis strategy, the focus was on growth with equity. And when you are talking about equity and growth, then this kind of a growth should take place where some kind of an equity or equality among the society should come. We also find the issue of concentration and distribution in industry and agriculture was given a lot of attention, though perhaps not with commensurate success. So, we also find that the concentration and distribution in the industry and agriculture, it was given some kind of attention, and though perhaps not with any kind of success which was to be seen. So, during this time that there should not be any kind of concentration of wealth, and one should also keep in mind that in the industry and in the other sectors of the economy, there should not be any kind of concentration of wealth. So, this will only happen when you will focus on the idea of equity. And we also find that the strategy did not posit equity against growth, but assumed that higher growth enabled higher levels of equity, and it was critical for meeting challenge of poverty, and the utmost attention was therefore given to the rapid growth. So, we find that these were some of the elements during the second 5-year plan, and their focus was on these kinds of aspects. We also find during this period, especially in 1951, the Industries Development and Regulation Act IDRA, where the state supervision of the development along the planned lines, that how dividing the activity between the public and the private sector, preventing the rise of concentration and monopoly. So, these kinds of things, they were being focused in 1951, that how the public and private sector, they function in a different sphere. And we also have to see that the concentration of wealth and concentration in the context of the monopoly should not take place in the society, and how different sectors of the economy, especially the small scale sector, it had to be promoted, it had to be protected from the bigger fish. Any kind of a lopsided development had also to be balanced in some way in terms of regional balances, and the kind of resources which are available to the economy, they had to be prioritized in such a way that they are able to lead to growth. And that is how we see that IDRA, it played an important role in 1951 in this context. And thereafter, especially in the 1950s, we see that some of the problems during 1950s, whether in the context of the balance of payment crisis because of the high imports, and we also find that foreign exchange was also in the short supply during this time. And that is how there were a lot of imposition of the stringent import policies, and there was a lot of control of the foreign exchange during this time. So we find because of such kind of policies, the license, quota rules and regulations, they came during this time, and over a period of time they entrenched themselves in the economy in such a way that they became some sort of they got some kind of a vicious stranglehold over the Indian economy. And this kind of a nexus between the bureaucracy, politicians, and it created such kind of a system that they will try to resist any kind of a change which has to be brought in this context. So we find that when one tries to see the kind of positive aspects when India was functioning under the problems which were, or the challenges which were posed by the 200 years of rule or the colonial rule. So when one has to understand the Indian situation from that perspective and how India was trying to overcome those challenges, we have to provide some kind of a consolation to the policy makers, some kind of a consolation to the people, those who were actively participating in the issue of Indian economic development as well. And we find that how 5-year plans or the issue of planning also became very, very important. And we also see that how the national income or the GNP, gross national product, it also developed during this time at the average rate of around 4% per year from 1951 to 1964-65. And 65-66 we will leave because we find that during this time there was a drought. At the same time in 1965 there was war with Pakistan, and because of which we find that the economy also suffered. And when you try to compare it with the rate of growth, then it was more than the kind of rate of growth which was happening during the colonial period during that time. So we find that the policy makers, they were also focusing on the increase in the savings and the investment rates, that how when there will be more savings, then there will be more investments in the economy, and then only when you will have indigenous investments, then only the economy can prosper. So when we tend to understand it in some kind of a framework of the data which is available with us, then the draft outline of the fourth plan, it estimated that the domestic savings and the total investment in the Indian economy were both 5.5% of the national income in 1950-51, which was rising to the savings of 10.5% and investment of 14% in 1965-66. So these are some of the data which try to in a way try to communicate a positive picture of the Indian economy. And we also find that there was a lot of thrust in the agricultural sector, where land reforms they were being initiated, though they were also being criticized that land reforms they were not able to achieve the objectives with which they were being initiated. But though they some kind of benefits they could occur to some of the people, those who were from the landless sectors of the economy. So we find that how agricultural extension and the community development work at the village level, that was also being initiated, and infrastructural investment in various sectors of the agrarian sectors like irrigation, power, agricultural research, that was also initiated during these times, and it created the conditions for considerable agricultural growth during this period. So we find that the agriculture also grew during this period, and it was comparatively better when you compare it with the kind of agricultural practices or agricultural growth which was happening during the colonial period. And when you try to see in the context of other countries like Japan or China, then we find that during this period it was comparatively better. When you tend to compare with Japan, then Japan had a less rate of growth during this time, that is if you see the period from 1878 to 1912. and even lower growth rate till 1937. So, if we tend to in a way see the other economies of Asia, and these economies were comparatively free from the colonial rule. And when you compare the Indian situation, where the focus was on the context of the civil liberties and modern democratic structure, so one has to see that these kind of changes which were coming to the economy and other sectors of the economy were also in the framework of the political systems as well, where the political system was modern and democratic in nature. The civil liberties of the people, they were not even curtailed when you compare it with other economies or countries of the world like China, Korea and Soviet Union, etc. And in this context, in the context of the agrarian reforms, especially in the 1960s, we find that Green Revolution was introduced in India, and the father of the Green Revolution, Norman Borlaug, and how US provided this kind of the technical support which was needed in India, because India was short of food grains and it was not able to meet the demands of agriculture which was there in India, and how it had to import food grains during the first 3 5-year plans. So, we find that the focus of the economy in the Green Revolution period was to grow as much as possible, and how India was importing heavily from US under the controversial PL 480 scheme. And this PL 480 scheme was in the context of public law 480 scheme in US, where US President was given this right that the excess or the surplus food grains, they could be exported to the other friendly countries of the world. And because of this scheme, US also had this kind of an impression that it would be able to in a way force, or will be able to in a way arm twist India in some way in the foreign policy issues, because India was trying to be non-aligned in nature. And this controversial public law 480 scheme was also in the context that how the money could be provided in rupee and not in the dollars. So, it was beneficial for India in that context that money could be given in rupees, and the precious foreign exchange could be saved. And we find that when the Green Revolution takes place, with the introduction of the Green Revolution during this time, the dependence on the food grain import reduced in India, and India became a place where sufficient food grains could be produced in India, so that everyone in that sense could be provided the food grains, and India's dependence on the other countries reduced that way. And we also find that when you tend to understand the situation of industry during the planning process, then they also had a growth rate of 7.1% per annum between 1951 and 1965, and it was also based on the rapid import substitution, and was also focused on the consumer goods and the capital goods and intermediate goods, especially after the second 5-year plan. So, we find that how industry was also in a way trying to evolve, how industry was also trying to have its own course of development, and we find that the second 5-year plan, around 70% of the plan expenditure on industry went to the metal, machinery and chemical industries, and in the third plan it was 80%. So, we find that various important industries, the basic industries, they were being provided the kind of thrust during the second plan and thereafter in the third 5-year plan as well, and how planning as a process was playing an important role in the Indian economy. Though there is a lot of criticism as well that India was not able to achieve much during this time, but we also have to understand that India was a newly independent country which was being ruled for nearly 200 years by a colonial ruler, and they had taken away so much wealth away from India. So, they made India comparatively very, very poor, and the share of the Indian trade which was there before the coming of the British was enormous, and when they left India it was hardly less than 2%. So that was the situation of India at that point of time. And how we find that over a period of time, when Indians, they in a way engaged themselves in the industrialization process, how they were in a way trying to make more and more equipments for themselves. And earlier around 90% of the machines, they were being imported. But over a period of time, we find that by 1960 and thereafter in 1974, the dependence reduces to 43% in 1960 and 9% in 1974. So that way we find that definitely such kind of investment was being made in the industries, such kind of machinery was being produced in India, that the dependence got reduced, and because of which we find that it could be seen as some sort of a major achievement. And we also find that when the sector will become will function in that way, then it will have more autonomy. India will have more autonomy from the advanced countries in determining her own rate of capital accumulation or growth. So we find that industrial development as the issue of food security, which came through the Green Revolution, both of them, they played an important role. And at the same time, it also could play an important role where India could play India could have its own independent foreign policy as well. Bipin Chandra argues that the weight of the public sector in the overall economy, it increased rapidly, and it captured the commanding heights of the economy, further marginalizing presence of an already small foreign sector. In India, unlike certain Latin American countries, public sector did not grow in collaboration with foreign private capital or multinational corporations. So Bipin Chandra has argued in this framework where the public sector was able to grow, and how the public sector in a way marginalized the small foreign sector, because the indigenous industrialists, they had their own private sector, and on the other hand the government was playing an important role in the public sector. In the various industries the government ventured. So we find that when you compare it with other Latin American countries, India's case was not like that, because they were in a way trying to collaborate with the foreign private capital, which was not the case in India, and as well as the multinational corporations. So these kind of things, they were happening in the Indian context. And at the same time we also find that various kinds of institutes which were relating to the science, for example CSIR, Atomic Energy Commission was also set up, and all these institutions, they were also playing their part, apart from the various universities and institutions which were being created and which were providing all sorts of technical help, support to the people, in that sense that more and more people, when they will go to universities to study science, and how they will be absorbed in these institutions. And other institutions like IIMs and IITs, they were also being established, and how university system was also strengthened. But at the same time we also find that because of the focus on the education system in the context of the ideas which were borrowed from Macaulay, we find that there was some kind of a deterioration and a lot of brain drain during this time, and how people from India they shifted to or migrated to US, and this created a lot of problem. But one also has to realize that the setting up of these IITs and IIMs etc. during this time, India was able to compete during the globalization process, which was initiated in the 1990s. Otherwise it would have been a major problem, because Indian industries, they were able to entrench themselves during the period after independence. And at different points of time, especially 1960s, we find that the monsoon failures in 1965 and 66, which also led to some kind of stagnation, and the other associated issues were in the framework of the balance of payment situation, which was fragile since 1956-57, and how the foreign exchange reserves, which were around 340 million between 1964-65 and 66-67, and they could only cover less than 2 months of imports. So we find that these kinds of problems, they were also there, and because of which we find that the government also initiated certain kind of changes in the economy, in the context that how the banks, they got nationalized in 69, MRTP, Monopolies and Restrictive Trade Practices Act also came in 69, and we also find that insurance was nationalized in 72 and coal industry was nationalized in 73. And at the same time, other kind of laws, they were also being initiated. Foreign Exchange Regulation Act was passed in 1973, and we find that, as you can see on the screen as well, that numerous restrictions on foreign investment and functioning of foreign companies in India, making India one of the difficult destinations for foreign capital in the world. And we also find that how government also played an important role in taking over the sick companies, for example the textile mills, a lot of them, so that these loss making companies do not close down. So the focus of the government was every sector, that the companies which are the sick companies, they may not be closed. So the government was playing an important role in terms of making legislation, so that MRTP and FERA, they were being passed, and it also had to see the kind of problems which were there in the Indian society in the context of the foreign exchange balance, in the context of the food stocks, high inflation, and we also have to see that the other areas of political sphere, like the war with Pakistan in 1965, it created that kind of situation. The government thought in terms of reducing the fiscal deficit by reducing the government expenditure, so that the fiscal deficit could be reduced. And all of us are also aware in the framework of the kind of problems which could be seen in 1971 with the East Pakistan, and how India played an important role by fighting a war with Pakistan, where Bangladesh could achieve its independence. And when Bangladesh became independent in 1971, and thereafter we see that how droughts also came in 72 and 74, and oil shocks could also be seen, where oil prices increased, and how Green Revolution played an important role in that context, that how the issue of food security could be resolved with the introduction of the high yielding varieties of seeds during this time. And we find that because of the Green Revolution, agriculture, India was able to increase its food crop production. And people, those who are critics of Green Revolution, they have their own ideas, where they say that it was a lopsided development, and how the ecology suffered during this period. So in a way to conclude the discussion, I would like to point out that the 50s and 60s, they were the period of the nation building, and how the planning process played an important role in the various sectors of the economy, so that the problems which were there during the colonial period, they could be overcome in a systematic manner. With this, I would like to end the discussion. Thank you.